Hello, this is Detective Darius Rolfe Johnson, Darius Honeybee. Student code name, student ID 124186161. Now I'd like to get into my final project of our programming.
I'm back in the world again. I have the hammer. I have the hammer. Where's? It's restarting the entire thing again. There she is.
Now, we'd like to figure out how do we figure out this scene in virtual reality. We'll be running a scene in virtual reality using Wizard, a Python-based program. We'll need models and 3D objects from Sketchfab and other reliable sources to get our 3D modelings, and an optional choice of being a VR virtual reality headset in which we can interact in our environment. Moving on, we have setting the code for setting the environment. I'll explain this into much detail in a bit. And the code for recording the environment. These are what's vital to figure out who murdered the victim, and we'll figure out these suspects sooner or later. So, today we'll be going over how the murder scene happened, figuring out the scene from piece by piece using our line of coding, thanks to Python and Wizard. Moving on here, as we can see, our coding in our disguise have allowed us to help us find it. Here are our module. We have Viz, VizFX, VizConnect, VizInputs. These are what are necessary to recreate the entire scene. Viz set multiple example. This will allow us to see the murder in action, more defined, the entire scene happening before our very own eyes. VizConnect config is what allows us to control it, allows us to fool our suspects into believing they're merely recreating the entire situation all over again. Moving on, we have our environment. This is what allows us to recreate the scene, the background, everything required for the environment needed, make us fool our suspects. Possible for it. Next on, we have our objects. These are the only objects pickable because this is what we determined to be necessary in our project. We have the fedora, what used masked the entire scene, and the hammer, the weapon used inside the scene. We would like to define these as grapple objects for ease of use. As we can see here next, in our next line of code, we have the grappler viz connect get raw tool grabber, grabber set item grapple objects. This is technically our remote for our left hand, and the other one, our right. Now, as we take a look inside the VR, now we'd like to go into our phase where we get the Oculus on, and we start our code. We write down our participant number. I'll explain that in detail later. Now, as I get in, we are in the moment. For now, I'll only be using one of the controllers used. So, as we see here, I can see my entire situation moving around. And as I move closer, I'll grab the hammer. This is the defined object we can see here for our camera. Understandably, this is how we can use VR to simulate what happened at the moment. I can let go of the action as I let go. For now, there is no physics engine in place, as that would be easy to do, but we would like to fool our suspects for now. Hammer. And next, moving on, we have the fedora. This allows us to conceal what was there. As you can see, I can't see beyond it. This is how VR is utilized in a virtual space for research. Now that we've seen how it is working in the actual space of the murder, we want to record it to make sure we know which of our suspects is the guilty. So, moving on here, we have subject viz input, which will allow us to anticipate which of their numbers are there, which one of them did it, or clearly defined, so we can figure out the information. Next, we have our start timer from VizTix. VizWord allows us to, this is the line of code used to calculate in seconds for our program. Moving on, we have the save data for our entire event. We'll go more into that detail. So we have two events we would like to detail. This session event allows us to find out which object was grabbed and when and how was it grabbed. As we can see here, define onGrab, collapse time, vistick, start time. If grabbed, Fedora, data subject, then subject, string subject, grab Fedora, text. This will allow us to tell us when was the Fedora grabbed, and perhaps where was the Fedora grabbed. This is very valuable information to finding out how he concealed his identity. And moving on next to our hammer, this will allow us to action whether he used the hammer to swing down at the right place at the time of the murder. And we'd like to gather that up all together so it'll be easier for us to find out which one of them is the murderer. Moving onwards, we have tools import. From tools, import grabber, viz callbacks, grab event on grab. This allows us to, well, figure out which one is grabbable and gets the data. Heading onwards to save data for tracking. Now we have the tracking data. What did the person move around? Were they moved to the left, to the right, up, down perhaps? Maybe. We'll know, thanks to the data we have here in our program. Here's how we save it too. Similar to the one, we like to find out their orientation of the moment, whether they are more slider to the left or slider to the right, perhaps turned, positioning of the area as well, of the scene. Then we make a string out of the data and write it down into the tracking field. This, ladies and gentlemen, allows us to figure out which one of us is the murderer, which one of them, and we'll catch the murderer. Thank you very much. Now that we looked at the data, we can see here how it was tracked. Looking at it, we can see which of our position was moved during the exact second it was used. This was used inside here, as we can see here, from our tracking data and our session data. These two are very valuable to figure out this. Thank you very much. We'll continue our session and figure out what went wrong and how do we solve this.